So he said, have you smoked? And I said, yeah, I have. He said, have you ever worked with asbestos? I said, yeah, I have. He said, have you ever worked with brick dust or wood dust? So back in 1982, I was the guy that emptied the vacuum cleaners when they came back off the building sites and poured them into the skip. And he said, you've got a brain tumour. I said, all right, okay. And he said, it's going to kill you.
As regular viewers will know, I am not a man to bandy about the word inspirational just willy-nilly. But the story I'm about to play you is nothing short of precisely that. Inspirational. It's the story of a construction and demolition man who overcame adversity, who has used that adversity as a fuel to power the next stage of his life, and who is now using his own experience to help others. To give you some context, I asked the man in question, Paul Latham, to take us right back to the very beginning.
Yeah, so an interesting story, I suppose. So 1980s, when I left school, there was a recession on, pretty similar to what we're about to go into again. I quite like maths and I quite liked accounts and things like that. My mum and dad said, oh, you need to work for a bank. You know, that's the future. If only we knew then what we know now. And there were no jobs. There was this massive recession on. The teachers, very much like the teachers of today, going, you're all doomed and you're all just going to have to go and sign on. So I didn't get the opportunity to work for the bank till some years later. But one thing that did inspire me, and this is something that I've tried to carry on really through all of my career, and certainly now, is that I was lucky enough, the school that I went to, it's a normal secondary school, that they allowed us to go on half-day release to do car mechanics. So we went on a bus, the number 28, across the Warren Farm School, and these teachers, you can imagine the health and safety back in the day, we did all sorts of things, messing around with all these cars, and really inspired us that, you know, we hadn't got a lot of hope, just like a lot of the kids that I meet today. So that hope thing had been kicked out of us. But these guys were like, right, this is a set of feeler gauges, this is a set of spanners, you can take that engine to pieces and you can put it back together again. And it was probably one of the subjects that I really excelled in, but filled me full of confidence. So I left school, went to work for a little engineering company on one of these youth opportunity schemes, right in the centre of Birmingham. Stopped there for about 12 months, I think, until they'd run out of money, and then got made redundant. And I walked out of there thinking, right, I've got to find another job. I literally walked across the road into a place then that was a standalone tool hire company called WH Price. And there was an advert in the window that said trade counter assistant required. So 16 going on 17, I thought I can do that, which I couldn't. But they interviewed me, and I can visualise the interview now. So they interviewed me and said for my cheek that they would take me on board and that they would train me. And I went through all the different departments, did all sorts of things. Some huge respect for those guys putting up with me for being an absolute pain in the neck and asking all of those questions every time they said, "Can you do this?" Going, "Yeah, but why?" But that was the training of the day. So by the time I was 21, I'd made Salesman of the Year, and there was 120 staff in that company, and it was just sat on its own. It was one of the biggest in the West Midlands. But I was thinking about this over the last few days, thinking about when did I start touching and filling around in the demolition side of things. And I was thinking about in Nechells, when they brought down the power stations there back in 1982, I can remember putting all the generators onto them, and they were hand crank start. There was no electric start. And there was a guy that used to ring us up at 10 o'clock every morning and tell us that we couldn't get these things to start and we've got to send an engineer down to go and fix them. But there was never any panic, because he said they'd all got to walk from the top of this power station that they were taking down brick by brick. There was no days of these long reach machines that we've got now. There was blokes walking down the scaffolding, and it took them about 20 minutes to half an hour to get all the way down. So we got 20 minutes to get in there and fix the generators. So yeah, I think that was my initiation, I think, into demolition in the day.
You've taken me up to you're 21 and you're sales manager of the year, and you've stuck with it almost ever since, I guess.
Yeah, so I made this salesperson of the year back in the day, and that was the training. So every Saturday morning there was a training course on, which was they They're absolutely brilliant. And they were John Cleese. They used to buy John Cleese videos for us to watch, whether that was customer services, whether it was abrasive wheels, and the sales directors and the sales guys all came in and showed us how to use the machine, so we'd be more confident about selling them. And I stayed in that industry, and I changed probably about once every 2 years after that, either through moving around the area or getting headhunted to different companies. So I worked for there was a company called Venture Plant, which was a piling rig hire company and a plant hire company. I went and worked for them. So I worked for lots and lots of different companies, and through all of that, I picked up so much knowledge. It was absolutely awesome, because somebody ring up and go, "Oh, have you got one of these?" "No, but I know where you can get one from," and almost ended up with that one-stop shop of knowledge stuck in my head that most people hadn't got in the industry. So I stopped in that up until about when did I come out of there? Probably about the last 3 years, 4 years, and came away from it.
So you mentioned training. I take it that was one of the next tangents that your career took, was it?
Yeah. So I worked for lots of different people, whether that was Hewden and Stewart. Who did we work for at that point? So Hewden and Stewart, Speedies, Kendricks in the day. A lot of respect for David Kendrick, I must admit. What an entrepreneur he was. Worked for all sorts of different types of people. And then me and my dad decided to set up our own little tool and plant hire company. So we set that up. That was doing rather well. And then we had a client ring us up, and he said, "Paul," he said, I'm really stuck. He said, "I can't get onto one of the sites." He said, "They told us if I haven't got a certificate to use my angle grinder, I can't go on." He said, how stupid is this?" He said, "Can you sort it out?" So, of course, a few phone calls and a little bit of digging later, and put myself on an instructor course. And that was 1998. And then I can remember sat with my dad going, "Do you know, we're making more money out of going out and doing these training courses for half a day than we are out of ironing all the gear that we've got, ironing it out." And that started us off. So 1998, as the pure regs came in, and more people were going, we need a certificate to get onto site, was when I started. So both me and my dad travelled around the country, teaching people to use power tools and abrasive wheels and high pressure water jetting, and did all that stuff from 1998. And the company's still running today. My eldest son has taken all that over. So
while your son is taking care of that, you have gone slightly off at a bit of a tangent, I would say.
Offered a little bit of a piece, really, Mark. If you want me to explain a little bit more about that, I will do.
Please do.
So some 9 years ago, working away as I was, looking after the different companies that I was running, I was working for Chiltern Railways at the time, doing some training for them on a Thursday and Friday, and then I had to travel to the other side of London to do some work for another client on a Saturday morning. That's what you do when you work for yourself. That night, I stopped in a hotel, and I wasn't very well. I was physically sick that night. Now, when you work for yourself, you don't do sick. You do turning up and just getting on with it. But I was ill. So my wife's a nurse, bless her, for all of her sins. She's a nurse. And I rang her in the morning and said, "Look, I've been really ill." And she went, "Like, just get the job done and get yourself off home." And by the way, on the fridge, there's a letter from the doctors that says you should have gone for a checkup, like a little bit of a mini M&OT. So I paid heed to that straight away. Not. When I saw the client in the morning, the client said, "You don't look very well, Paul." I said, "No, I'm really ill." He said, "Look, just get this training done, go home." So I set off home, pulled onto the services, fell asleep on the services, and a little man came and knocked on the window, and he said, "You've been here for more than 2 hours, either pay or move on. And by the way, you don't look very well." So I grabbed myself a cup of coffee and continued my journey home. On the way home, I had a strange sensation on the side of my face, which felt like somebody had got either a half a teaspoon of warm water and trickled it down the side of my face, or a spider had undone it, which was a bit odd, because I thought straight away, sunroof, water leak, and it wasn't, because I haven't got a sunroof. So it seemed a bit strange. Anyway, went home, complained to the wife that I'd been ill. She thrust the piece of paper in my hand and went, "Go to the doctors." So I went to the doctor, and I thought, I'm just going to get told off. I'm going to get that, high cholesterol, blood pressure, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to get told off. So I get to the doctors, they do all the checks, and the guy said, you know what? He said, your liver function's good. I was like, yes, that's good news. Cholesterol's okay. So, brilliant. And he said, you got high blood pressure. And I said, you want to try working in the plant and tool iron training industry for all these years? You too would have high blood pressure. Anyway, they sorted me tablets out, got me where I should be, and I went for one last checkup. And the guy said, have you still got that strange sensation? I said, yeah. So every couple of hours, I get this weird sensation. He said, okay, Paul, he says, we're going to send you for an MRI scan. And I've never had one of those before. And as you do, I end up ringing my best mate, Jim. Spoke to him this morning. He works for, or he's about to start work with DOA in Milan in January. One of the guys that you pick the phone up to in the middle of the night, and he's there. So I rang Jim and I said, Jim, I've got to go for this MRI scan. What's it like when you're going to hate it? He says, you're going to want to get out, you want to take it to pieces, and you're going to want to find out why it does all that knocking when you're inside. So I went for this MRI scan. And there was a lady. It was in like a big Arctic. So there was two ladies doing the MRI scanning. There was a lady in having hers done, and of course they're talking through. This is what's going on, and we're watching the thing. Oh, brilliant! He's quite like this. So when I had mine done, came out, and I went right. I said, "Is there anybody else in behind me?" They said, "No." I said, "Can you play it back then? Can I have a look at what you've done on mine?" And they said, "Oh no, you'll have to wait." And I thought, "No, you miserable toads." And I said, "How long have we got to wait?" And they said, "Well, it could be 2 or 3 weeks. So you get on." So that was on the Wednesday. On the Friday, I had a phone call from the doctors going, "We've got your results back." I was like, yes, fair play to Dudley NHS for getting that one turned around so quick. And they said, "Can you come and see us?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do it." So the days of the old paper diary, so I got the phone up and I'm like, "Yeah, what do you think? I'm a bit busy. When do you want me to come?" And they went, "This afternoon." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, I've got to pick my little boy up from school." I said, "But my mum's here." I said, "Because I'm going out tonight." And they said, Good. We'll see her at 3:30. So down to the doctors. And all that the doctor said was that I'd got a massive mastoid, which at that point didn't really mean a lot. And perhaps the viewers that are watching at the moment are going, "I've no idea what that is." So there is a void up behind your jawbone, not that there's a big empty space and things rattle around it. I said, "So what happens now?" And they said, "Well, we're going to put you in touch with the hospital, and the hospital will be in touch." So I got outside and didn't ring my wife first. I rang Jim and said to Jim, "Do us a favour." I said, "I've got this massive mastoid." He went, "Hang on, I'm on Google Death." So he's Googled this. And he went, "I can't talk to you." And I could hear him filling up on the phone. And he put the phone down. He didn't ring me back till the Monday. He was really upset. So I rang my wife, and my wife went, "Don't worry about it. It's going to be nothing." The Monday morning, I got a phone call from a guy called Mr. Grew. Now, I thought it was one of my customers playing up because it was the era of Mr. Grew and the Minions. So this guy's rang me. He says, "Is that Paul Latham?" I said, "Who's that?" He says, "Mr. Grew." I went, "All right." I said, "How's the Minions?" Nothing. I said, "Right, okay." I said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm your surgeon." He said, "I've just sent you a letter." He said, "But you're going to get the letter too late." He said, "You need to be here on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock and you need to bring somebody with you." Right, okay. That sounds a little bit serious. He went, "Yeah, see you Wednesday." Clunk, down went the phone. So I said to my wife, "You need to have the day off. We've got to go and do this." So we went to the hospital, and he put up the scan that you've now got in your possession. So it goes to all these layers in your head, and it gets down to this part here, and there is a blob about the size of a golf ball. It's about 4.5 centimetres in diameter. Running through the centre of that is my vagal nerve, which controls your heartbeat and lots of other functions around your body, which are quite serious. And at the back of it is the main carotid artery that supplies your brain with blood. So this guy's sitting there, and he said, "Have you seen the scans?" I said, "No." So I went through and he put it up, and I said, "What's the big blob in you?" He said, "You've got a brain tumour." I said, "All right, okay." And he said, "It's going to kill you." Okay, that's quite a serious thing to say on a Wednesday morning. And he said, "Right, so I need to ask you some questions." And I think this is really important about today and some of the other stuff perhaps we're going to talk about. So this guy sat there with a list in front of him, and he said, "Have you done any of the following?" So he said, "Have you smoked?" And I said, "Yeah, I have." He said, "Have you ever worked with asbestos?" I said, "Yeah, I have." He said, have you ever worked with brick dust or wood dust? So back in 1982, I was the guy that emptied the vacuum cleaners when they came back off the building sites and poured them into the skip. There weren't any dust bags then days, and there was no dust masks, and I was covered in it. Then he said, have you worked with used engine oils? I said, listen, mate, I said, I teach this stuff. I said, I know that it is all dangerous, and yes, I have worked with all of those. And he says, at the moment, he says, I can't tell you which one, if any of those have caused this. He said, until I can get it out. I said, okay. I said, so what's your intentions? He says, well, I want to have you back in next week and we're going to take it out. So for those of you of disposition that don't like a bit of blood and gore, you might want to turn off at this point. So he said, we're going to get it out. So we're going to take your face off. So he says, we're going to cut you from behind both ears, right the way around. He said, we're going to take all your teeth out. He said, we're going to dislocate your bottom jaw, and I'm going to saw from here up to here. He said, we're going to open it up. He said, and we're going to cut it off the vagal nerve. Right, okay, so then we're going to put you back together. So, all right. And just like taking your car or having a new mechanic to come in and have a look at one of your JCB diggers, you want to make sure that these guys have got some qualifications. So I said, how many of these have you done? He says, well, I've only done one. He said, they're quite rare. Okay. He says, and what happened to him? He said, he died. Right, okay, this is not so good. So I said, so what's my chances of survival then based on this? And he said, 20%. I said, okay. I said, so I survive. Can I carry on doing what I'm doing? So naively at this point, I think I'm going to be fine. And he said, well, you won't be able to talk properly. You won't be able to swallow properly. You're going to have problems breathing. He said, but apart from that, you could be okay. So I said, so when do you want to do this? He said, next week. I said, you can't do that next week. One, I've got no insurance. Two, I said, I'm an only son. My mom's still alive. She's in her 80s. I said, you can't. I said, I've got nobody to really run all the companies. I need to go away and put all of this into place. He said, how long do you want? So remembering that salesman's thing, so when I was 21, I thought, this is it. This is the perfect pitch. So I said, well, 6 months would be good. He said, I don't think I can give you that long. He said, I could probably give you 3. He said, but if things start to change and get worse, you're going to have to come back. So I left on this, oh nuts, I need to sort my life out, and started putting some things into place with the companies. Started talking to people and saying my goodbyes, and had some long conversations with Jim. And we went away on holiday and did all sorts of things just to put that tick box. He did buy me at Christmas a 101 things to do before you die. One of them in that 101 things to do before you die was about touching PP9 batteries that are in smoke detectors and putting them on your tongue. I had to tell him at this point, I think that at that point there was 36 people around the world died from doing that, which wasn't a good thing to do. But we had some fun with it. Anyway, so I bought these 3 months, went through some terrible times in that 3 months going, I'm going to die. And something that I'd never done before. So I'd never been to church before. Apart from getting married twice, I'd never been inside a church, really wasn't interested, it wasn't me. But I sat at home, my wife was at work, my 2 children were playing in the bedroom, so my eldest lad at the time was 14, and my little boy was 8. And I prayed, I called out to whoever was out there and went, why me? I know I've done something wrong in the past, and no doubt some of the people that will know me from my past will go, yeah, you did, not that bad, I've always got an alibi. But I thought, why me? So I cried out and I fell asleep in the armchair and woke up. And during that sleep dream bit, got told to go to church. So I walked past the church to get to a church. Went the first time. My lads were like, we don't go to church, Dad. I said, I know. I said, but you're too young to be left on your own. You're going to have to come with me. If you don't like it, we won't go the following week. Anyway, the following week came and I couldn't get out of bed. I was on a real low. My little boy, who's 8, my eldest boy knew a little bit, not a lot, and my youngest boy knew nothing. We wanted to keep it away from him. And he got up, he got himself dressed, and he came up and he said, Daddy, we need to go. He said, we need to go to church. And I said, no, not today, mate. I said, we'll go next week. And he said, no. He said, you need to go to church. Okay. So got up, got dressed, went to church. And the vicar that was there at the time said, do you want to talk to me? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. I I want those answers to some of the questions that I've got, like why me and where'd you go and what goes on. And lots of people prayed for me. We got confirmed at Worcester Cathedral in this 3-month window. And I went back for the MRI scan, and Mr. Grew was there as also. His dry sense of humour. And he said, what have you eaten? What have you drunk? What have you done? And I said, nothing. Why? And he said, your tumour stopped growing. And I said, well, the only thing I have done, I said, is I've been to church. And he said, oh, that I think I've done. And he said, okay, he says, you've just bought yourself another 3 months. And that went on for 4.5 years. So every 3 months going, we're definitely going to have this out. We're definitely going to take your face off. They tried to operate to get samples of it, and that didn't happen. And then about 4 years ago, he had me in and he said, look, we're going to do one last scan, but we really do want to take this out. And I'd spoken to people all over the world about these tumours, done some real research into it. So they did one last MRI scan, and he called me in. And I've got all my scans. Normally I'd walk round to his computer and have a quick look at the scans. And I walked in and there was no scan. And I said, Mr. Gross, there's no scan this week. He said, no, there's a letter. He said, you better sit down. He said, the people that do these scans, Paul, he said, are very clever people. I said, yeah, I appreciate that. He said, but there's a spelling mistake in this. I said, Mr. Gross, what does it say? He said, it says on here, no significant growth in last 4 years. I said, so what's that mean? He said, it means that you're wasting my time and your time. And he got up and he shook my hand and he said, please leave. He said, and don't come back. So I still have my tumour. And by God's grace alone, I am still here. And I got more and more involved in doing stuff at church, with readings and other things, and became an authorised lay minister. And it got to a point where I didn't want to go to work. And I ended up walking away from the businesses that I've got. As much as I'm there for them if they need me, I'm not there to tell them how to run it or run the finances or anything else. I'm just there as a friend on the end of the phone. And now I'm going on the route of ordination. So I'm at the Church Mission Society in Oxford, being trained up to be a pioneer. I lead worship on a Wednesday from a high street shop in the middle of Cradley Heath, where we do some great work out there in the community. And in about 2.5 years' time to be ordained as what we call a distinctive deacon, which is somebody that works between the church doorsteps and the community. So that's me at the moment.
That is one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard. I mean, I'll be absolutely honest. Probably the same as you were up until this happened. I am a man devoid of faith. I've done the christening. I've done the getting married in church. That's where me and church is part company. Was there any religion in your family upbringing, or was this completely, totally out of left field?
Completely left field, Mark. Nobody. So my dad sang in the choir at St Martin's Church in the Bullring when he was a little boy, but my mum and dad didn't go to church. My wife's parents didn't go to church. I'd never been to Sunday school. So no, nothing at all to do with church.
I can't help thinking, we'll come back to where you are now, but I can't help thinking that I can't think of too many industries that I would consider more godless than the demolition and construction. And lo, unto that industry was born a soon-to-be ordained minister. It's beyond left field. It's the field just past left field, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. I was talking to somebody yesterday about that. I talk to everybody about it all day, every day, I suppose. Now this is my calling. But it was great. So when I was still working and teaching, it was nice to go around and tell that story almost as it was ongoing, and talk to some of the new apprentices that were coming in and talking to them about used engine oils, that putting your gloves on and all the rest of it, and you know, making sure that we don't go around not wearing our dust masks when we're dealing with all this stuff. But yeah, it has been really interesting, and the people, when I was going at ordination, one of the things that they ask you is to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. And I went and asked all of the customers that I was dealing with if they thought that this was me. expecting everybody to go, no, you're mad, Paul, it isn't you. And a huge proportion of people came out in the conversations that said that they had a faith of some sort. So that was really interesting for me, that nobody argued, nobody turned around and said, oh, you're mad, I don't believe in it, Paul. Everybody went, yeah, go on, get on with it, it's you. And then there was people at break times going, Paul, I think I might have a faith as well. Or can you talk to me more about it? And that was of all faiths. That was multi-faith. I mean, now I sit on the West Midlands Combined Authority for Multi-Faith. And that plays an important part to me, that we've got this faith going across the whole of the West Midlands, and that we're all trying to work together.
I spent quite a lot of my time with the Demolition Fraternity, but particularly the Demolition Fraternity around Birmingham, and there is a very, very strong sort of Catholic foothold amongst those guys, Irish upbringing and that, or Irish heritage or whatever it might be. So I'm well aware of that, but it's surprising. To my mind, in this day and age, it feels surprising that it runs that deep.
Yeah, I mean, I speak for the Church of England and obviously across the multi-faiths, that we have church has changed. And I'm not talking about church, I'm talking about the church building, not as church. The pubs are open 7 days a week. You going to church on a Sunday has changed. We've got very little people coming to church on a Sunday. But what we are finding is that we've got people coming to churches on different days. So tomorrow morning, I've got worship running out of this double-fronted shop next to Iceland by the bus stop. And we've got 21, 22 people that will attend that tomorrow, aging from 93 years of age down to 4. So we'll have some Baby Shark going on there somewhere tomorrow for the little lad that's going to come with us. But it's interesting that people still want to come to faith, but not particularly on a Sunday. Lots of the older people that I talk to talk about where they were almost forced to go to the Sunday schools, and then when they got old enough, they didn't want to come after. But we, as construction and demolition, we need to change. You were talking this morning, I was listening to some of the stuff that you were playing on this morning about whether we should be looking at our youngsters that are picking up their Xboxes and using stuff. And I think we need to move with the times. The days of us all going deaf and hand-arm vibration on site needs to stop. And we need to enhance and encourage the stuff that we've got going on. I was sat with, probably in the background, Mark, I don't know whether you can see it, there's a KUKA robotics robot. And I was there's an engineering and technology place that's opened in Dudley, and I was giving a talk there with the bishop 2 weeks ago. And that's really encouraging, the amount of people that are taking up this new technology with these new robots. And of course, that's our future for us in demolition and in construction.
Your past background, I guess, is now sort of influencing what you're doing within the church. That idea of sort of reaching out to people and being supportive, but also, your brush with ill health as well. So you're well aware of that. But I guess it cuts both ways as well, because that outreach is very much of its time, because we're talking constantly these days about things like mental health and suicide and that kind of thing within construction. And I've referred to this in the past. A lot of people reach out to a crutch, be it drugs or alcohol, which is again another talking point. But other people, their crutch is sometimes the church. So you kind of sit at the crux of all of that, don't you? Yeah.
So tonight, we're going to feed about 40 to 60 people tonight, and there's another one later on in this week. But every Tuesday night, we feed 40 to 60 people. Most of those people, and most of the people that I meet nowadays that walk into this shop that we've got, this calf, are broken. And I don't think there's any of us that aren't broken in some way. Some people need a sticking plaster. Some people need some more serious stuff that's in that first aid kit. But drugs and alcohol are huge, and mental health. We run a men's group on a Wednesday afternoon, and we've run numerous people coming in and talking to us about men's mental health. It's huge. But I've got there's a ladies group that's run this morning. There's 14 ladies that go to that, really gelling together about mental health. But there is huge amounts of drugs and alcohol at the moment that is about. And as a church and as multi-faith, we play a really important part in that, because the studies show that a lot of the people that when they turn to drugs and alcohol or something else, that there has been what we call a catastrophic failure. So whether that's the loss of a child or the bereavement of a family friend, or whether it's somebody really close to us, that catastrophic failure, normally we would see in some way. And I feel responsible doing what I do about picking that up at its early stages and working with people to try and help them. I really do.
In some ways, your health was your catastrophic failure. It was a medical failure, but catastrophic nonetheless.
Yeah, I sat in this office and out of the window, which you can't see, it's full of machinery. And I sat in here one night, all night, going, it would be easier if I wasn't here. A lot easier if I just walked away from all of this and I ended this on my terms and not on Mr. Grew's terms. I was quite prepared to end all of that. And luckily for me, my faith carried me through that night. But I appreciate that not everybody has the benefit of that faith. And I've taught mental health. I've done some of the mental health training. It's paramount on site now. It really is. You know your mates on site better than anybody else does. So I saw my niece on Sunday. I haven't seen her for months and months and months and months. She's got 2 young children, really stressful job working in a school as a teacher. And two of the questions asked were exactly the same. And how are you? And really, how are you? Are you finding time in all of this for you? Because we've seen so many people that are on that edge, right on that very edge. And as people that's close, we can see it sometimes. And don't be scared to ask the question. The person that looks jolly on the outside can be very much broken on the inside.
I had my own ups and downs mental health wise, and one of the key causes of that was loss of best friend in a motorcycle accident. I tried counselling, didn't work. Tried happy pills, not entirely sure whether they worked or not. I've got to be honest. I mean, I've been absolutely blown away with your story, but I think if somebody had offered me church or God or faith as an option, I think I'd have treated that exactly the same way as I treated happy pills and counselling. It must be hard. Clearly you are a believer, and fair play to you for it. But is that not hard when you come up against people that, either by design or previous experience, they've decided, no, that's not for me. I want no part of it.
Yeah, I got asked this question yesterday from somebody quite up within the church, and they said, "What happens if they ask you about church?" And I said, "I'm going to make it really nice and simple. It's broke. The church is broken. It's been broken for many years, and there's no point turning around and saying it's any different, because it's not. That would be fibbing. The church is broken. A lot of the churches are broken. But the good thing is that we know that, and we need to work now so that doesn't happen again. I can only work on the experiences that I've had. So I've been working with a guy, and we'll call him Dave for today, that I've walked with him for the last 12 months. So he lost his wife. She passed away. He won't live in the flat that they're in. So it's a council flat. He won't sleep there. So he sleeps in the local graveyard with the other alcoholics and the drug addicts. And when he hasn't got any money, they support him by giving him drugs and alcohol. Now, I've walked with him for 12 months. He turned up on one of our worship Wednesdays to get told off by a 93-year-old who just lost her husband and has now just lost her son. And he said, "Well, how do you cope?" And she said, "Well, I've got a faith." And he went, "Well, I don't think I've got one." 12 months later, we're now starting slowly to talk to him. And he has started to change his habits for the right habits. And he's accepting now that we're trying to help. Not from a let's be faith, but that we're there as a friend to walk with him, to get him that help from the right people. So we deal with Cranston and we deal with Sandwell Council. So we've got one of the lowest areas of drug and alcohol within the West Midlands through Sandwell. And that's the way that we're trying to catch people and walk with them. And I think that's the support that we need to be giving to the drug and alcohol. But I was talking to this young lad downstairs, Gary, who works with Coleman's, about this drug and alcohol issue. We know that there's a huge percentage of people on site that are under the influence of it. There was an interesting conversation with them this morning, talking to them about what should we do. And they were talking about make sure that you get all the supervisors and managers checked if you're going to do all the lads on site. But we were also talking about support and making sure that there is a support network there, and that we don't just push these people away, that we try and support them in some way. Otherwise, we are going to have a catastrophic failure.
It's really quite interesting. I think you described this church as broken. I'm glad you said it, not me, because that it kind of opens up the conversation. I think, as an outsider looking in, if you take something like the Bible and just say, here's a pretty good set of rules to live by, not going to enforce it. You're not going to pitch up here on a Sunday and do your singing and your dancing and all that. But here's a pretty good set of rules to live by. A pretty good book, I have to say. Yeah. And also, when you strip away maybe the religious elements of it, going to church and hanging out with some like-minded people once or twice a week, probably not a bad idea at all.
Yeah, and just like our man Dave, he's out there with a load of other people and hanging around with them. And he's come to the opinion now that it's better to come and sit in our little cafe in a safe place with safe people that are non-judgmental, and we'll feed him and we'll give him tea and coffee all day long, and he helps us out. Now he volunteers and gives a little bit of help. It's safer for him than it is for him to hang around with those people that aren't doing it. So that hanging out bit, an interesting one, Mark, I suppose, really, off the back of that, is I had a guy come to see me that was looking for a job to come and work with me doing what I do. And he came and he got this big long list of all these things, and he was talking, this chapter, this and that verse, that out of the Bible. And I sat there for about an hour and listened to him, and he said, Paul, at no point, have you quoted any chapters or verses, he said, out of the Bible? And I said, no. I said, we don't do that. I said, it doesn't need selling. I said, by your actions alone, it will sell itself. I said, just sit and look around you at the people that are in here that are broken, that are here because we're not trying to sell something. And he went, this is what a good point. I said, yeah, so you don't need to stand up there and quote chapter and verse. It's very much like trying to sell health and safety. You don't need to go up there and quote out the pure red 9 paragraphs 1 and 2. Most of the people know that anyway, but by your actions alone, that should speak louder than those words.
Because of the mental health thing, but also because of the drugs and alcohol thing, I've been speaking about this quite a bit recently, and we've got various initiatives going on. The one that I spoke to recently was a guy who believes that there is a place for sport to help with mental health. In other words, get together, have a kick around on a five-a-side pitch, or go and play a game of golf, what it might be, which is not dissimilar to what we've just said, this idea of getting a group of people together to have a chat. Is there a place for faith, church, religion on the modern demolition construction site?
Hurrah! Yes, there is. I have. When I first came and started working with the church, and I went, I would love to be walking around the industrial estates, going and talking to people on the industrial estates, because I do feel that there is there. And there's a bit called chaplaincy. So there are people. So in Merry Hill, the big major shopping centre, there are chaplains based in there, but there aren't many chaplains that work in the workplace. And I honestly believe that there is a place for people on our construction sites and places like that for people to go and talk to them. There used to be the Round Oak Steelworks not far from here, massive organisation. And the local vicars used to go in there once or twice a week just to go in and talk to the staff. And that really helped the workforce, and it helped the employer by these people having somebody to talk to that wasn't from in the workforce, that was non-judgmental. So yeah, I think there's a huge scope there that's untapped, that we could be that person to go and talk to.
Going back to when you, I don't even know what the terminology is, when you had your dreams thing, you came to a realization, your epiphany. I don't know what you call it.
That's all right.
How did your family react? Because I've got to be honest, I think if I woke up my wife up tomorrow morning and said, I've been having a natter with the bloke upstairs, I've decided to quit the job, the conversation's going to be pretty brief, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so my as I say, my wife's a sister now. I met her when she was a student, so we've gone through all sorts of things, and she's been massively supportive. She runs the ladies groups, and we did Santa for 20 or 30 kids yesterday and stuff. She really does get heavily involved. But right at the very beginning, my wife was quite sceptical, going, really, are these guys trying to convert you, or are they is this some cult thing that's going on? I went through all that whole pain barrier, and me getting really excited about it. My wife almost keeping my feet on the floor, going, you need to slow down and just think about what's going on. So she really has kept me firmly rooted, rather than flying off, because I'm fairly sure I'd have been off working somewhere else, doing some of God's work around the rest of the world by now. But she's kept me firmly rooted. But when I got asked if I wanted to go through for ordination, I had to go home and say to her, look, these guys want me to become ordained as a priest. What do you think? And both my wife and my two children went, just go and do it, it's you. And that for me spoke volumes. So yeah, it's with their blessing that I'm doing what I'm doing. And when I decided to stop doing all the businesses, so I was in and out of China, import export, I did all sorts of things. We had some great holidays and everything else, and now I really do have to budget like everybody else does. That money, that income's not there anymore, so it's had a massive effect on us as a family, but they've been really supportive.
Setting aside the recovery from your mass, your tumour, yeah, and what you're doing now, how has this changed you as a person? I'm trying not to say, are you one of those happy clappers that leaps out of bed every morning with a big grin on his face and all is right with the world? No,
certainly not the happy clappy type. I've always got out of bed in the morning, and I've never ever got out of bed in the morning. All the years I went to work, never got up and gone, I don't want to go today. I thoroughly enjoyed doing what I did, travelling all over the world. All the things that I did, even the horrible jobs like emptying those vacuum cleaners when they came back, I thoroughly enjoyed all of it. And I still get out of bed the same way now. I thoroughly enjoy doing what I'm doing. It has its low points, the same as every job does. But I thoroughly enjoy it. So thoroughly enjoy it. So it's changed me from being, I suppose, in my past when I made decisions as a director, if I made a decision, we did it, and we did it straight away. Now things don't happen so quickly. So if I have an idea about wanting to do something, we really need to work with the community and the volunteers I've got to pull it off. And that could take months. So we're working on some projects at the moment that have been bubbling away for 12 months that will be awesome for the local community.
I guess my final question, I realise I'm assuming you're working pretty much locally with the local community there, but given all that you've said, if anybody out there has watched this or listened to this and would like to get in touch, is there a way to do that from outside the area?
Yeah, so we've got, we're on LinkedIn. So the Cradley Heath Community Link is on LinkedIn. We'd love to have some followers on there. We're on Facebook, again, as the Cradley Heath Community Link. There's an email on all of those that you can get in touch with me. And I'd love to have some more conversations with people. Just to give you a bit of a two inklings, if I can, Mark, that we've got two projects that we're running currently. One is a children's school uniform swap. So we've run that for 2 years now. This year we've just run it, and we basically take in uniform that kids have grown out of. They bring those in cleaned and done. We rebag those and we'd redistribute those. We did 2,500 children's school uniforms in just over a week. There is a massive call. These kids that came yesterday to this have breakfast with Santa in our little cafe area, just looking at the kids and looking at the parents going, do you know what, I've met all of you. over the last 12 months using the services that we've got, whether that's the food bank or whether it's the clothes bit that we're doing. So it's getting out and reaching the right people. The other thing that we're working on is a bike project with young people. So we're looking at getting push bikes. Alfords have already donated a huge amount. They give us 67 push bikes for us to work with. But we're going to train up some bike mechanics so that during the day they can have their own little business. We can get the kids that are on the streets off the streets fixing bikes, so we can inspire them just as I was inspired when I was young, and give them that can-do attitude, and get them involved in electric bikes and normal bikes as well. But then we can build bikes then for the little kids, and we can build bikes for parents, and we'll do lead bike rides and stuff. And hopefully that gives us our next lot of engineers that will be working on these machines that you talk about every week quite passionately. And we need them. So hopefully this little project that we've got going across Sandwell at the moment with 67 bikes in, I think it's 8 different areas, will take off around the rest of the country. And if we can fund it properly, that's our next lot of engineers, mate. That's what I'd like to be able to do.
Paul, honestly, that has been absolutely inspiring.
Cool.
Trust me, you've seen my show. I'm not a man that's inspired.
No. I'll tell you what was inspiring about it, if I can, and I know I'm fair play to you. The guy that you had from France, was it France, that was doing the talk a few weeks ago?
Yeah, Gilles Ronnet.
Yeah. What an inspiring guy. 30 odd years doing what he's doing. And you know, when you just go, and this is something we get taught for when we're going through for what we're doing for ordination, is that you really need to go and sit in what we call the context. You go and sit in that context and go and see what's going on and work in it. You can't do that from a distance. And it was so very evident of him that he'd been sat in it for so long, he'd absorbed it, he'd sucked it in. He was influencing the business about what they were bringing out as new machines, and that was so powerful with him doing that. Absolutely brilliant.
All the best, Paul. Have a great Christmas, and I'll speak to you again sometime.
God bless. Thank
Cheers,
you. Bye-bye now.